So we're picking back up with our 5 value drawing, and I'm going to start with a kneaded eraser in order to do some erasure refinement work. The important thing to note about a kneaded eraser, we can kind of shape it into a sort of knife's edge shape. So we can get really straight, sharp lines. But because the rubber is so soft, the mark that you make with the kneaded eraser tends to be quite soft. The rubber is constantly moving as we're making marks. As we press into the paper, it's softening the rubber. It's really important to think about erasure as an extension of our drawing. It's a way to get another kind of mark that we can't get with just the charcoal. Another kind of eraser that we can use is our white plastic eraser. And in order to get the most out of this, sometimes we have to keep a really nice, sharp, fine edge. This allows me to draw in fine lines with the edge of the eraser. So every once in a while I trim it with an X-Acto knife or a box cutter. And one thing to notice that's different from the kneaded eraser is that this eraser gives us a sharper, more defined line. The plasticky rubber is a little bit harder and it holds its shape a little bit longer. So we don't have to sharpen the eraser as much. It just kind of gives you a different look. So in this drawing, I use the difference between these erasers for different effects. This one gives us a sharper effect for foreground details, whereas the kneaded eraser gave us a softer effect. So I use that in the background or in areas that maybe look a little bit more blurred. So I'm coming back into the potato with the kneaded eraser in order to do some soft value adjustments. I'm also using it to lighten some of the lines that were a little bit heavy or inaccurate um, as I was from last week when we were blocking in the drawing. Now I'm using the eraser pencil, and generally this gives us a really fine line with the eraser. Um, it acts as a pencil does, but it takes away charcoal. And this is allowing me to get some really fine surface texture that I wouldn't be able to get otherwise. Also, if you watch what I'm doing around here, some of the dark areas sort of flattened out, and I'm using the eraser pencil in order to add textural details within the shadows. Um, for me, it's also helping to model the surface form of the potato. Um, it allows me to start to make it look more lumpy and textured. So the still life is sort of coming to life with the use of the eraser pencil. So after spending a good amount of time with the erasure technique in order to add more details and linear elements and texture, um, it's time to do some finishing touches using the charcoal pencils. So I'll use both the medium and the dark charcoal pencils, and I'm using that sometimes for a little bit of subtle cross hatching, and sometimes to add a bit more contrast to areas of the surface of the form, and uh, sometimes some subtle linear elements. But as you'll see, everything's kind of delicate and fine at this stage. So we're nearing the end, and what I wanted to do is use charcoal pencils again in order to add drop shadows. And this actually does a lot to add a cohesive sense of light to the drawing. So what's very important here is that I'm taking a very close look at the subject and trying to understand what side of the form shadows are falling. And then I'm taking my time to be very consistent and add these little shadow details. And they're a very simple thing, but you'll see that um, the form kind of goes from looking very flat when it was only erasure marks to suddenly having some spatial pop when I start to block in these little drop shadows. And another thing you'll notice is that there are some darker marks that I'm making and there are some lighter marks. And for me, that's a matter of composition. Um, it's not necessary to have them be the same all over. In fact, it's more interesting to have variation across the page. So I'm using some areas in order to lay in darker passages with the drop shadows. And some passages will be very light, and that's okay. Ultimately, it makes it more interesting. Here's a very important pro tip when you're drawing. Lay down a piece of paper on your drawing, and then you can rest your hand on it without smudging the charcoal beneath. This is one of the last parts of the drawing that I want to add details to. And it's a darker part of the drawing, so I'm using the eraser pencil in order to draw in some light. Um, I'm paying special attention to how the light lands on these strands of burlap. And it's just about done. So the last thing we have to do is spray the drawing with fixative. And this secures all of the particles of charcoal to the page, making it permanent. So we're using the Spectrafix casein-based fixative. Highly recommend this product. It's non-toxic and reworkable. And here's the finished piece. Good luck with yours, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.